remarks? Yeah. All right, we're good.
Yeah. All right, let's call the meeting to order. Roll call. City Manager Seisland.
Here.
Council Member Brenner.
Here.
Tom Jenny from the DPW.
Here.
Jay Cowlett from Attorney.
Here.
Unfortunately, Mayor Pro Tem Tom Caulfield couldn't attend today. He had an ordinance meeting and he's tied up, but I do want to acknowledge all the work he's been doing on this. He's been instrumental in terms of finance. That's his background. He's been fantastic with the work we've done. So unfortunately, he can't be here today. I also want to acknowledge we've got Patrick Jones from OHM here today to answer some questions. And then also Mayor Hodges is in attendance, as well as Council Member Marty McMillan. I want to thank both of you, and Warren is running tech for us. I do want to acknowledge again Mayor Hodges and Council Member Marty McMillan. Obviously, they're not on infrastructure, but this has been a great collaborative effort. I'm very appreciative for all the help they've provided. And we've been going over all this, keeping everyone appraised. And again, this has been a really good team effort. So I appreciate them both being here today. So today we're going to be going over, and this is a little bit different in terms of infrastructure meetings, but we are going to be going over both the millage proposal, going through some of the questions. And our goal here, what we're striving for, is to try to keep the community informed as to where we are, what we're trying to achieve, the challenges facing us. And the millage proposal is on the ballot in November with the intent of this is going to be the financing option if it passes for us to proceed. Now, what we're going to go through here, City Manager Seisland is going to be going through the millage presentation. We've gone through this in a city council meeting before, but again, for those who haven't been able to see it, it is posted on the infrastructure website, but we'd like to kind of put that out there to lay the for the conversation today. Again, we've been receiving questions from the community. We've put that out there on the FAQ. I want you to know that, again, we may or may not be able to answer everything today. There's a reason why city attorney is here at the moment. As you may be aware, there is pending litigation against the city due to the events of last year. So we were going to do the best to be as upfront and forthright with everything that we've got. Again, there may be some questions that we can't address right now in this, but we are going to work at putting that information out there for everybody. And again, we're trying to be as forward with all this as possible. So don't hesitate to ask us questions. Send them in via email. And again, depending on how this all goes, we're more than happy to have other forums to try to put information out there. If I can, I'd like to put this over to City Manager Seisland now to go forward with the village presentation.
Yes, thank you. And I really appreciate it. Councilmember Wiener and other guests, thank you for coming. And to those in the public that are watching, we thank you for your interest in learning about our city's infrastructure. Just a couple of quick points before I go into our PowerPoint presentation, which if you are not able to see, it will be available online that you can watch this presentation as well as the PowerPoint. What are some of the millage benefits, of if this millage happens? There's an increased system pressure reliability of the city water mains. It helps replace the end-of-life cycle water mains. Helps reduce the impact to the community for unanticipated water main breaks and sewer collapses. Reduce the amount of funds lost annually for reactive and costly emergency system repairs. We'd like to be proactive rather than reactive, which often is the case with our DPW department. And I really have to thank Tom, Jenny, and the crew for doing such a great job with always being there for main breaks and working with that. And so, a millage requires the city to spend the dollars on activities included in the millage language only, and it increases our transparency of how the city is spending those tax dollars, which is something that we want to show the community and the public that those dollars that you are providing, what they're being invested into in our water sewer system. Less regulations due to no state or federal requirements that come with loan and grant programs. These requirements add to the cost of engineering fees and admin staff time. No interest costs as compared to a private bond or state loan program. And if this passes, the first initial construction projects with the 2022 December collection could start in the spring of 2023. And so with that said, I'm going to move over and give a presentation regarding the millage. All right, Warren, kick us off. All right, so what is on the ballot? So we have the creation of a new millage dedicated to funding improvements of the maintenance of the city's water and sewer system. This is available online for viewing. Will also be available later online too. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but pretty much it's a 10-year millage for 2.5 mills. It'll generate about 1.7 million, and this will go to year 2032. Next slide. Why is a millage being proposed? Again, our infrastructure is beyond its identified service life. We have water mains that are over 100 years old. These are typically supposed to be at 80 years, not at 100. Water main breaks are frequent. We have undersized water mains, present challenges in fighting fires as well. As visual aids, we do have, after the presentation, Warren has right in front of him an 8-inch water main, which is a brand new water main. And then
I know white he is.
and a 6-inch water main, which is our current inventory right now, about 95% of our community. And so that's 35 miles of that water main. Also with him is a lead service line, which we have about 2,000 of those we have to replace, which is a state mandate to replace in, thank you, Warren, in West Point. We have a sewer system that's had some challenges with these major storm events where there's more and more frequent storms. You know, now it's hard to even talk about 100, 500 year, 700 years. It seems like we're having it every other year. So we need to be proactive and identify how we're going to fix it. We believe by adding sewer lining is really going to help invest in our system. Infrastructure is built to last 100 years. It's over 100 years old now. And the city cannot simply afford to continue bearing the financial and operational burden that comes from service interruptions. Just as an example, we've lost $1 million in the last 10 years just from water main breaks. So that's approximately about 35 million gallons per water main break. So all that money is being lost, and we're having to spend that. So that million just got lost in the water sewer fund that we weren't able to reinvest in capital improvements. Or next. Infrastructure by the numbers. So just a couple of numbers that are out there. This is what the city has to maintain, and this is what's done in the water sewer fund, helping to maintain these assets. We have, except the roadway. We have about 37 miles of roadway, 35 miles of water main, all installed in the 1920s, 41 miles of sanitary sewers, 29 and a half of storm, 950 catch basins, 8 valves, 66 fire hydrants, 3 lift stations, 2,500 storm and sanitary manholes, 2,025 lead service lines, and 2 pump stations that we have to maintain, operate, and continue to reinvest in. Next. So what is the cost to replace if we were to do just water mains and we were to line all sewer mains and replace lead service lines? What would that total cost be? 100%. So for water mains, the half-mile water main, which was just approved by City Council last night, those replacement costs average about $730,000. To replace the entire system, it would cost $51 million to the city of Grosse Pointe to replace 100% of our water mains. For sanitary sewers, lining 2/3 of them costs about $208,000. To line all the sewers in the city, it's going to cost us $25 million. Lead service lines, using an average estimate of $7,000 per lead service line, would cost the city roughly $15 million. And again, that's the state mandate that we're required to replace all lead service lines in 20 years by 2042. Right, Patrick? 2042. Okay. Complete water main, lining, sewers, lead service line, just those 3 alone, $91 million. Next. How will we spend it? So what can we fix with 1.7 million that would annually be generated by this millage? Again, every year, because of heavy rollback, this number will actually be reduced over time. With the public safety millage that was passed, that was 2.75 mils. We've actually seen a 6% reduction in that millage, so that's down to 2.59. So, we're going to have to be proactive, and that's where we're helping. With the assistance of Baker Tilly, will be able to help us understand those water sewer rates to be able to better plan for the future. In a year, we can replace half a mile of water main, fund our annual requirement for removing all lead service lines to 2041, which is $820,000. And then obviously this time frame can be adjusted with Eagle depending on the replacement and if we were to get drinking water revolving fund loan. Cost of lead service line removal could be included in the water main replacement category depending on presence of lead lines in a chosen main. As an example, City Council approved last night the water main project. It was a significant help because not only were we replacing the water main, we're replacing several lead service lines, which that actually reduced the cost of lead service lines. I think it was roughly about $1,300 per lead service line, where if we just go to do lead service lines only, it's going to cost more and more. So the more we can couple those areas strategically of water main and lead service is going to save everybody. And with lining of sewers, we could do 2/3 of a mile, which is again about 208,000. Next. So our population, so from 1970, we were about 15,600 residents. 2020, we're at 11,595. So we've experienced a decline of about 35%. The population decline from 1970 to 2020, residents now are expected to pay a system that fulfilled 4,000 additional residents. So many, many years ago, we had another 4,000 residents that we were servicing and providing that quality of service. And as well, they were helping us out when it came to paying for water and sewer that, lost that revenue. Nice. So early history to start of our city infrastructure. So that picture that Warren has is actually the inside of our pump station over here behind City Hall. It was part of the Federal Works program established by FDR in the 1930s. And so it was built in 1939. 95% of the city's water mains were installed at this time. Our combined sewer system was constructed, and this carries sanitary sewage and stormwater, and our Jefferson Station was in 1980s and 1990s. So in 1984 and 85 was when we had water mains totaling 1,300 feet was installed. That's the last time we've done water mains in West Park. This was primarily on Cadgett beginning at Jefferson. No water main installations and replacements have occurred since then, except for last night, we approved by City Council and will be going at this year. In the mid-1990s, the city began a multi-year project to separate the sewer system and build the Patterson Park pump station. And the cost of this work was $22 million and paid for by issuing bonds. And those payments were completed in 2018. That was a 20-year program. Also, the Fox Creek Relief System was closed in Grosse Pointe Park due to a lawsuit at this time. This picture right here is a water main break, and where we are patching our current system that was built in the 1920s. And Tom, I'd like you to talk about the process for identifying the water main break and how you go about fixing it.
Well, a lot of times the process of identifying it is luck, which means, we can dig a hole, hopefully, and find it right away. The water comes out.
Okay.
Find it right away. If not, we have to probe and dig more. Fixing it then requires us to go down, isolate the break first, which means we're interrupting people's services at their homes, and fire protection on the block, which is a major inconvenience. Once we do that, we proceed to dig. But this one, I think, was at Kensington and Kirchhoff's. We had to break out the street, dig it up. Hopefully don't find a previous break, which was there. Those are two sleeves, the two stainless steel parts you see are in between the ladder there are two stainless steel sleeves. Identify it, clean it, put a stainless steel sleeve on it, turn it back on, hope everything is working out properly.
And on average, how long is it usually when you have a water main break of this magnitude? How many hours are residents that are affected?
That one, because a lot of the gates don't work, was 8 to 10 hours.
Okay.
Usually they're 4 to 6.
Okay. Do you recall how many blocks that was or streets were affected?
This was the one that affected people all the way over on Bishop South. Because we turned off so many. The main that goes down Kirchhoff is a 16-inch water main. That's one of our main feeds that comes from Detroit. Once we start interrupting that, is when we start losing pressure everywhere else. So that ended up affecting people all the way down on Bishop South.
Okay, thank you. So in the 2010, city continued routine maintenance of cleaning its head basins. City lined a section of sewer in Bedford. It had a cross connection affecting several homes. After the flood of 2016, the city invested in moving transformers that were below grade to above grade and switched gear in the Jefferson pump station. We plugged manhole covers that were missing plugs and sealed catch basins. We conducted smoke testing to identify areas of inflow and infiltration or iron short. We started applications for drinking water revolving fund loan to fund water infrastructure and completion. And we also completed our water asset management plan. And in these 2010s, 2010s, and even now, we're just patching water main breaks as you see in this visual. What have we done since the June flood of 2021? The City hired Pipe Tech to be able to clean all 41 miles and identify and televise our sewer system. Additional heavy cleaning is in progress right now. We are cleaning catch basins, continued application of the drinking water revolving fund loan through the state. Application to FEMA for the Building Resilient Independent Communities to fund the EERV, which was unfortunately not awarded by FEMA. New water main replacement on Mac from Cadgy to Kensington approved by council last night. We hired Baker Tilly to analyze water sewer rates and fund capital improvements for in the future. In progress right now and expected to be at our next council meeting, water sewer capital improvement fund plan. And coordinated regional cooperation with the Great Lakes Water Authority, Grosse Pointe Community, the City of Detroit to share data information and continue requests of infrastructure funding. As well, I'd like to note that with the Drinking Water Revolving Fund, about $255 million of additional American Rescue Plan dollars came through the state and federal government. Unfortunately, Grosse Pointe Park did not receive any of those funds, so we're going to keep continuing to be proactive, keep trying, to find other areas for opportunities, as well as the Clean Water Revolving Fund, which identifies some works. So what does my utility bill cover? So our budget right now, our total cost is about $6.5 million. GLWA water purchases are about 1.4, GLWA sewage 1.9, system operating, repair and maintenance and personnel is about 3.1 million. Roughly in the capital improvements we're able to add into the water sewer fund reserves is about roughly $150,000. So with the hiring of Baker Tilly, we'll be able to gradually look at those water sewer rates, and especially with this millage, we want to take into consideration whichever happens the voters choose, how we're going to fund, these projects moving forward.
Can you just want to make sure we reiterate that point?
Yeah.
The dollar amount looks large, 3.14 million for operating repair maintenance, but in effect, only about $100,000 to $150,000 a year of that goes into our water sewer reserve. That's where we're pulling right now to do the water main replacement. So again, it's very important to hammer that out. That's the only money that we have to really do capital projects right now.
Thank you. Why aren't the taxes I pay enough? Only 33% of the taxes paid by homeowners stays with the city. The rest is sent to the state, county, local school district, and other entities. Currently, no taxes are used to support the water and sewer systems. Additionally, much of our capital needs stems from the age of our system. Vast majority, again, installed in the 1920s. Repair and maintenance work funded by water sewer rates is no longer adequate to meet our needs. And right now, currently, Grosse Pointe Park has the lowest city millage rate of all the Grosse Pointe. How much would water rates need to increase to generate the same amount of funds as the proposed millage, which is about 1.7 million? So right now, we would be looking at approximately about a 30 to 40% increase in water sewer rates. They need to be raised to have the equivalent as the proposed millage. The magnitude of a rate increase would disproportionately impact lower income residents, which could be compounded with the current environment of historic inflation. I also want to note as well, with the city applying for the Drinking Water Revolving Fund loan, this was a 20-year loan that it was approximately $33 million that, as proposed, residents would pay $66 bi-monthly on their water bill, or close to $400 a year for 20 years. All that did, and will continue to do, just in case if we get funding, is it only identifies water. It touches none of the sewers. And so, that's part of the risk that with the Drinking Water Revolving Fund loan, obviously, may or may not happen, but this as well only addresses just the water side of our infrastructure. Why not take out a bond and fix everything at once? Interest rates have increased dramatically under the current market conditions. Future rates are uncertain at best and expected to rise at the worst. Higher interest rates come with higher costs. The current supply chain and market conditions carry a risk that borrowing funds would be insufficient once bids are received. It is simply not practical to plan or replace our infrastructure all at once. And a bond requires the money to be spent with a short amount of time, whereas a millage allows strategic funding to replace infrastructure as conditions change regularly in priorities. Has the city used a millage for infrastructure before? Yes. In 2014, the voters approved the road millage and subsequently extended it in 2018. That approximately since 2014, that generated about $8 million roughly. The city enjoys an average PASER rating of 7 out of 10, which is considered good condition for our roads. And from just 2020 to 2021, millage funds were used to increase 3.49 of centerline miles from poor to good. This is 9.5% of all roads in the city. And the road millage has received strong community support. It has proven to be an effective way in maintaining and enhancing our roadway infrastructure. And the city intends to use the proceeds of the water sewer millage just as successfully as it has the road millage. How much would this cost me? At 2.5 mils, the average homeowner with a taxable value of $170,000 would pay an additional $425 in property taxes per year. To determine your exact cost, review your current notice of assessment, taxable valuation, and property classification, and multiply the 2022 taxable value by 0.0025. So it's a little hard for the public and for those in attendance to see, but this is the areas of highest need for water infrastructure that is added to our drinking water revolving fund loan application. So there's areas within the community that certainly need the highest concentration for water mains, but also lead service line replacement. That's why strategically we're targeting these areas through OHM's work with the drinking water revolving fund application. Thanks. A little hard to see again, but the water main condition ratings, this is a visual map that shows the water main condition ratings in all of Grosse Pointe Park. 1 is great, 5 is not so good. So you'll see that pink line as well. That is the new water main that is being replaced this year. And that was the area where we had the highest concentration of water main breaks. Tom, how many water main breaks did we have just in that section over the last couple of years?
We've been here 3 years, we've had 10.
Okay.
That is actually underneath the new Mac Avenue. So when those happen, it's more of a challenge to try to find them because it comes up wherever it wants to. On top of that, we've got the replacement of the concrete and asphalt on top of it. I think the last one we did, I think just the asphalt and concrete was an extra $12,000 just for the one right at Caju and Mac right there.
Okay.
So, yes. When we do, I'm sorry, we replace it with moving it into the green belt, getting it out of the road.
Okay. Next. Water main break history from 2000 to 2020. This visual here identifies all of the main breaks that have happened in our community. And you can especially see in the areas that are shaded, those are most targeted with water main breaks. And those are the areas we have identified that would get targeted water main replacement in the future. Next slide. So Warren has in front of him and as well, this is a current 6-inch city water main in Grosse Pointe Park. So this feeds about 95% of our community. The water is safe to drink through. You can view our water quality reports on our website. But obviously we want to improve reliability. We want to stop these water main breaks, and we want to, fund these assets. Next. And that is a comparable of the new 8-inch water main to the old 6-inch water main in Grosse Pointe Park. So this is a sewer pipe with debris. Cleaning is in progress right now with Pipe Tech. Next slide. And this is what a clean sewer pipe with lining would look like. And so I'd like to get more of these. Next slide. So I'm wrapping up here, and then so if you want to visit more of the infrastructure website, please visit the Grosse Pointe Park City website. Click at the very top right for information about city infrastructure, and you can look below for information about the ballot proposal, road PASER readings, downspout disconnection information, water asset management, infrastructure committee reports, OHM reports, and the GWRF loan application. So without being further, I'll turn it over again to Councilmember Wiener.
Okay. So before we move on, I just want to say a special thank you to Assistant City Manager Warren Rothy, and then to Brian Brenner from the Community Engagement Committee, because they put a lot of work into this website. This was better communication, having a better outlet for information for residents. This has been a big focus of ours. So again, on the website, we've got that information out there. We're going to be trying different avenues to reach out to residents. We're trying to streamline things. Again, it's a work in progress, but again, thank you for the work that you've all put into it. Now, we're going to open this up, and actually I have some emailed questions here as well. I'm going to apologize because I might be a little bit long-winded with this, but I think it's very important that we have context with a lot of these questions and answers, because again, this is a very broad-based system, and there's a lot of influencing factors with all this. So again, I apologize if some of this is kind of long and drawn out, but it's important to kind of give that understanding to everybody. If I can start, so one of the first questions we have here is regarding the schedule for lead line replacement. So again, I'd like to put some context to this. Unfortunately, the reason we're all talking about lead lines in the state of Michigan and nationally as well is because obviously there was a catastrophe in Flint, Michigan. Now, we've stated this before and it's on the city website. First and foremost, our residents are safe. The circumstances that had occurred in Flint, very different situation than what we have here. In Flint, unfortunately, you had corrosive water being pumped into the system. It wasn't being treated, and then it was causing leaching on the pipes. The circumstance here in Grosse Pointe Park, or in all the points, is that, again, our water quality to begin with is good. Water is being heavily treated. So ipso facto, it's not impacting the lead lines. However, because of the political reality of what happened, there was an unfunded mandate passed by the state of Michigan. And what that basically did is it falls on municipalities. Municipalities are responsible for moving lead service lines into the home. So that's up into the home, up into the water meter. And again, this is an unfunded mandate across the board for all of us, and we're responsible for this. Now, there is a 20-year time frame on this, with 5% a year of lead lines being taken out. Currently, we have until 2042 to complete this. Again, the more proactive we can be, the better we can be with this. Now, first off, the city's already conducted an inventory of this. Basically, we had site visits. So we've got our plan for, we're talking about roughly 2,000 homes in Grosse Pointe Park that still need to have work done. And when we were talking about the numbers, it's important to unpack when City Manager Seisland went through the cost of lead lines, went through the cost of water mains. Those costs, again, those are independent, isolated costs. For example, lead lines, when there was conversations 2 years ago about it, the average lead line replacement, the talk was $5,000, but it can go anywhere up to $15,000. And it depends on materials, it depends on the work being done. One of the key focuses, our plan here, is we're trying to make things as efficient as possible. I mean, think about one of the biggest complaints that we have with Detroit Edison. Again, not to point fingers, but sometimes they dig a hole to work on a gas line, patch it up, and you dig a hole to work on a water line. What we're trying to do is kind of compartmentalize and do everything at once. That's one of the reasons why, if we couple this with water main replacement, it takes a potential extremely expensive lead line replacement and brings down the cost. Because again, you're piggybacking everything. Not only does it improve the cost also, but again, there's the environmental impact. It's not moving so much more earth, not disturbing the ground, not causing all that extra impact through the ground itself. That said,
and I do want to remind the public we are going to use sod.
So regarding the schedule, okay, the goal of the focus here is we are going to do everything we have to do to be compliant with the rules of the mandate. We're going to make sure that we're changing out as many water mains as we can. In fact, we're trying to be more aggressive than that timeline because, again, our philosophy here is to be as proactive as possible, because if we deal with it up front, we're going to save costs in the long term. In fact, you've seen this year, we've already outlaid $100,000 specifically for lead line replacement. Now we've got that water main project. But again, the intention here is that we're going to continuously go through. Now, to unpack that, another common question that we're getting is, what is our infrastructure planning? What we're trying to do is create a structured plan here, because again, it's a little bit difficult. Sometimes it's the tail chasing the dog here. What we have tried to do is outlay and figure out where are our biggest needs. What are the projects that we need to do? We typically break it down into three different things. We're talking about our water supply, our sewers, so our water removal, and then our lead lines. So what we've tried to do is basically create a board, figure out all of the different projects that we need to do. This is the work we've been doing with OHM and now with Baker Tilly as well, because again, we're going to be dictated what we can and can't do by the finances. One of the big things is that we are trying to pursue whatever grant money that we can possibly get. But one of the reasons we're pursuing this millage is this $1.7 million a year lets us actually take a very aggressive tack to water mains, to the sewer projects. And again, that couples with, and we're very confident with that amount of money, we can be more than compliant with the regulatory requirements on us. But and this is for those of you who've watched Hard Knocks, watch football. I kind of analogize this with, if you ever see the board where the football teams, they have all the players and the positions and who you're pulling down. That's sort of what we're doing with the infrastructure projects. We kind of have our board so that as we have financing, we have our plan, we have our priorities, but there's going to be two big factors that impact what we can and can't do. One, as we do receive money from the state, from the government, that allows us to accelerate plans. So we can actually move things down and improve the timeline. Two, one of the reasons that we like the idea of this 1.7 million, that we can have targeted plans every year, we are constantly learning about the system. And the reality, if nothing else, last year, the storms remind us that sometimes things aren't priorities until they hit you in the face. So as we're doing work on the sewers, as we're improving certain sections of water mains, there's going to be cascading effects throughout the rest of the system. So we do believe wholeheartedly that something that we consider a tier one priority, with work that we're doing on, let's say, sewer and water movement, as we see improvements, it actually might lower the necessity to hit it right away. And then we can be more efficient with how we allocate the funds and what we target. But again, with lead lines, we are going to be compliant with the regulations for the state. And again, the best way to do that is by coupling that with the other work that we're doing. Is there anything, out of wire, anything you want to add to that? Or
No, absolutely. I would, just one of the things about being aggressive in moving on these, we've seen a significant amount of inflation in terms of construction costs in the last 2 years even. We had, at council last night, we had a award for a water main project on Back Avenue. Quotes were actually gotten in 2020 for that exact same project, and we had the same bidder that increased their bid from $426,000 to $689,000 over a 2-year span. So there's a ton of infrastructure work being done across the metro region, and I think choosing to really get into the work as quick as possible is going to be a benefit because the construction costs aren't being cheaper anytime soon.
Yeah, and so actually to another point, talking about the financing, talking about the different options. One of the questions was bonds. There were big conversations about bonding this out with the previous infrastructure committee about 2 years ago. Again, that's not the course of action that was taken. We've already mentioned the financial realities of bonds. But the other aspect too is, like, if we had $50 million to put down right now, you wouldn't be able to get the construction crews to do it. In fact, if you have a requirement to spend money, that's where inefficiencies kick in too, because we would have to pay huge premiums to get people in. I mean, one of the nice things, we saw this with the sluice gate, we are starting to see, we're talking about things that we can't anticipate. Nobody expected, like a year ago, inflation, nobody had seen inflation in their lifetimes like this. And then it was transitory, and now we've got major increases. That said, we are seeing now some, and I'm seeing this, my business too, we are seeing construction crews starting to loosen up. We're starting to see more options for municipal bidding. It's actually better today than it was when we were talking about this about 3 months ago. So it's one of those things that we're going to be very cognizant of what the market dictates. And as we see opportunities, as we see the ability.
Nothing wrong when you're done.
Yeah, as we see opportunities to be more efficient on things, if we can get piggyback projects, it's absolutely what we're going to try to be doing. Again, we're where we have a lot of things to work on, so we're going to try to do this as effectively and efficiently as we can.
Nick, just for residents and the rest of us, could you maybe give us a 30-second explanation of the difference between a bond and millage? Because the question seems to keep popping up.
Okay, so first, try in 30 seconds. All right.
Okay, 40 seconds.
The drinking water revolving fund loan, that is essentially a bond because you're getting an X amount of dollars, and then the interest rate from the state, depending on our 20 or 30 year, is 2.1 or 1.875.
So we get all of a lump sum of money from
Just
a
for
bond.
water. That was only just for water only. So that was water mains, lead service lines, looping. That was about $400 a year, which is our current application as is right now, just for that. And so if we were to go out to the private market, that interest rate is higher. So right now in our current water sewer fund, we would be very cautious that we may not have enough money, even from the principal and interest payments, to be able to fund that bond over so many years. And that's part of the challenge of, why didn't we look for a bond? Why did we go for this millage instead? As well, we were looking into the equity, of like just the proportion of, residents in our community, how they would be affected, and being able to tie, with a bond, what is that, qualitative or, quantitative number for residents, on, this side or this side of the community, that we looked at this, that this would be the most fair, opportune, financing option for the community.
So just,
In a real basic level, Brian, maybe this is helpful, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
A bond is a loan. You're
Yeah.
borrowing money
Right.
to complete a project, think of your own home.
we get one
It's
lump,
like you get a lump sum from
You
a
get a lump,
bank,
yeah.
so to speak. You have a principal payment and an interest payment, and you have to pay it back. So that money either comes from a general fund or somewhere else. The city is then obligated to pay its bond funds. A millage is a tax. Millage is just another word for a tax. And typically, and under statute, what a millage or a tax is used for is precisely what we're talking about using it for here, which is community-wide infrastructure projects that benefit the entire community, so that I'm a resident, everybody that lives in this community is going to get the benefit. And so everybody also has the obligation to make those payments. And so at its most basic level, the way to think of it is a bond would be borrowing the money at a variable probably interest rate, or even a locked-in interest rate, which now we did the DPW loan at less than 2%, I think, and now it's 6-7%. So you would be borrowing the money at a higher interest rate. You would be paying the principal, which would be the cost of all the projects you're talking, but you'd also have to pay interest on the money that you're getting in. Whereas a tax is a yearly levy, a small obligation, I don't mean it that way, but an obligation for every resident to pay their fair share
over time.
on a tax over time to fund these projects.
So the bond, we get one lump sum that we don't even know that we would be able to contract out the work at this time. Obligated to pay back at an interest rate. The millage, we get the money over time that we can strategically plan. Obviously, we are not paying interest on it, and it also gives us the flexibility should we, as we continue to apply for grants.
Right.
I just wanted to make that clear for.
And you can't, and one other point real quick, sorry, Max, is, and Nick mentioned this, you can't sit on bond funds either.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, we're gonna park our bond money here. Under law, you have an obligation, a time period with which to expend those. So there's sort of a race to do it. Under certain circumstances, that can be a positive. Under circumstances like this, where you've got a very long-term expensive solution, it's better to have the time to do what Max had suggested, which is to really take an intentional planned approach and approaching that.
Speaking of financing, I'd like to actually broaden that out. Again, we talked about a lot of this on the FAQ, but I want to reiterate it tonight as well. There's 4 primary financing avenues that we've got. We've got millage, we've got bond, we've got the water bills, and then some residents have asked about special assessments. Now, I want to reiterate how this all works. A millage is a tax requires voter approval. And as Jake said, again, it's citywide improvement that impacts all the residents. We've already talked about the putting it on the water bills, and to be honest, especially under the circumstances right now, our opinion on that is it's less palatable. And again, unfortunately, I believe it would hit, especially in circumstances like today with inflation, it's going to hit lower income residents disproportionately harder as well. So aware of that. Now, the special assessment. The special assessment is a targeted fee basically that you would apply to specific residents, specific people who are impacted by something. So some people have suggested, why can't we do a special assessment on the lead lines? The idea being, well, some residents have lead lines, some don't. Unfortunately, the law is not in our favor on that for a couple of reasons. One, right now we are not responding to, again, a pressing need of the lead lines insofar as it's impacting the residents. Rather, we're responding to a statewide municipal mandate. So legally speaking, it's dubious ground to try to say that, we could do a special assessment just for the homes that have lead lines, because again, we're responding to a municipal mandate. Furthermore, and Jake can speak to this, water sewer, while there was a special assessment done in the past in Grosse Pointe Park for the sewer separation, presently, legal precedent says that a water sewer special assessment isn't legal. It's got to be a millage. St. Clair Shores did something that were challenged in court. And there's also Supreme Court precedent saying that you can't levy a special assessment just on specific residents. And again, the last thing we want to do is, create legal headaches for ourselves, added costs on something that, again, is legally dubious. Not to mention in the special assessment, you basically have to effectively have an accountant sitting there kind of breaking down every single home and the length and everything else. Whereas with the millage, again, it is easier for us to assess it. We're ready to go with it. So again, I think that's an important thing to kind of lay out there for residents. At this time too, I'd like to invite anybody from the audience if they'd like to come up, if they have any specific questions. Again, we'll do our very best to answer. And if not, again, we can kind of go over some of the other things we've been hearing. Is there anybody from the audience who'd like to ask? Please.
Well, I submitted written questions.
Yeah, I've been going through them. Pardon me? Yeah, sure. So.
Want me to come up and say them out loud? I'll do it.
No, that's fine. So, I mean, part of it too is, so the third question you asked was the total anticipated water infrastructure cost. We addressed that specifically in the presentation that we just put up, and that's also going to be out there. If you break every aspect of the infrastructure down and isolate them all, I mean, we're looking at potentially $90 million of work. But again, our view of that is we can save a tremendous amount of money by kind of lumping that all together. But nobody's saying that this millage is a magic bullet that will fix everything in one shot. But the point is, we need to start aggressively looking at this. I mean, as we've said, water mains, it's been 1985 since we've tackled a full water main replacement. And at this point, too, we need to go proactive and really start working on all these things.
And not only that, but with what Councilmember Wiener was saying, but with the 90 million just on the lead service lines, water mains, and sewer lining, we also have equipment needs from DPW of a sewer, jetter vac that'll need to be replaced over time. We have manholes that we're looking at replacing and identifying. We also have a pump station over at Patterson and Jefferson that need to be looked at. We have the EERV that's as well out there, as well as other future resilience projects that, we need to look at funding, which, again, could be in another tens of millions beyond that 90.
Sure. You also were looking to find out what other capital improvements are needed. So first and foremost, I mean, this millage, this is water sewer. This is what it is for, and it's written into it that it can only be used for that. So I mean, that's really the target of what we're talking about today. I mean, in terms of other infrastructure, like we have, knock on wood, our PASER ratings are quite good. And I can't really speak to other pressing projects. I mean, frankly, infrastructure right now, that's the need. That's what we're here to do today, and going forward. In terms of the capital improvement plan, so we've actually been working diligently on this, but one of the realities is it's very difficult to put a structured timeline out there for a capital improvement plan until we are financing this. I'd be remiss to put out there to residents, we're going to do X, Y, and Z until we actually know what money we have to spend. Again, we're structuring this, we're anticipating, hopefully the millage is going through, we're working with this 1.7 million a year. And again, one of the things is this, there can be other sources of revenue, not revenue, I should say, but again, grant money that may be coming in. That's why we're trying to create basically a plan, as we said, that we can kind of drop priorities in. Above and beyond that, again, we've been identifying other potential projects, things that would, again, streamline the sewer system. I mean, the goal here is that we want to have an optimized system that works as intended, works as good as it can work. So again, this is a plan we've been working with Baker Tilly. This is one of the reasons that they're going over the water sewer rates. And transparency is one of the goals here. I mean, this is why right from the get-go, I mean, the first thing when I got in was to work with DPW, start walking through our facilities, try to understand what we're working with. And right now, the goal here is transparency, to let residents know what we're working on, what to anticipate. This is why not only do we have our normal updates, but with the infrastructure planning, we're going to lay out there basically a 5-year plan. These are the things that we're anticipating year on year. And then again, we have other projects that may and may not see you scowling about the 5-year plan. I'm not stalling. The idea here is that we can kind of lay things out, but year on year, so residents know what to anticipate, know which areas we're going to be tackling, but realize that, again, it's not set in stone, because as priorities change, if there's a need, like for example, if water main breaks become a bigger issue in a certain section of the city, we can realign that. But the point being is that, if we're bringing this money, not to say that we're in a rush to spend it, but the goal is now here to build up the system to actually tackle what we need to do. I've said this many times, it's not just capital improvement as well. Preventative maintenance is a mantra of mine. It's critical. As we see right now, unfortunately, we're spending a lot of money just maintaining what we've got. The idea here being that as we fix water mains, as we fix sewer work, we're going to be saving that maintenance money that we can then reallocate to further improvements.
We, in our council packet yesterday was, with the finance report, there was a check that we wrote for $23,500 for asphalt for concrete repair because of a water main break. So I'm sure that's the kind of thing we're looking to save.
That's precisely what we're looking at. But for example, again, once we have, dollar amounts that we can work with, then we can be much more forthright with what we're planning on doing. Because again, I don't want to, one of the important things to me is I don't want to, mislead residents and suggest things that we don't fully know. Like, for example, that storm that we had last year, I think the sewer system right now is in much, much better shape. We've, done a tremendous job cleaning out. I mean, look, 900 cubic yards of debris have been taken out. Just for reference, 15 cubic yards is roughly a normal dump truck. I mean, and there's been SCADA systems upgraded at the pumping stations. So we have better real-time monitoring, our maintenance routine for the pumps, for the systems, everything. We're trying to improve everything we can. Now we have more flow data. Part of it too, with the preventative maintenance and the long-term planning, this is one of the reasons that we're looking at holding on to our pumps, or rather our flow meters. We can monitor the flow as we're doing work. We can basically better model out what we've got in our systems. But the intent here is that, again, one of the theoretical items on our preventative maintenance schedules, we're basically looking at allocating roughly $250,000 to $300,000 a year just for sewer scoping, cleaning, maintenance. Again, it's one of those things that dollar amount may be too much, but as we're building on the system, we're going to see. I mean, as we're scoping, as we're jetting, this is the first time this has been done. So now we can actually better see how does it maintain, how does the system function. So again, this is one of those plans that the intent here is to have it laid out as clear as possible for residents so they can anticipate what we will be doing. And we're building a system right now. So.
One question that I actually had heard a couple times. So this is a water infrastructure millage that will be on the ballot. Lake St. Clair's water, will this go towards repairing the marina? I am fortunate to not have a boat, but so will if this is passed, will my tax dollars go to fixing the marina for the boaters?
Absolutely not. This is only for water and sewer infrastructure in Grosse Pointe Park.
Okay. So 100%, this is not to fix the marina. Not that it doesn't need the repair.
Yeah, but the ballot proposal as stated states right in there what this is for. Water main, lead service lines, equipment, sewer resilience, restoration. You would legally have to have the marina in that proposal in order to do so. Otherwise, to your question, absolutely not. It's only water and sewer.
Excellent. Thank you, City Manager.
Anybody from the audience? Sorry, my wife is right. I talk too much. Anybody looking for anything more specific? We can keep going through some of these FAQ questions. Again, just because we don't talk about it tonight doesn't mean that we can't, that we're not going to keep working on this. We're going to be broadening out the FAQ based off some of these conversations. You'll see regular updates on it. Again, our goal here is to keep everybody appraised of what we're trying to do here.
I'm going to pose a question that Patrick Droz and I will discuss here. So if this proposal does not happen, then where do we go from here? That's the big question that's at play. So we'll continue to patch our system as we have been. So we'll continue to have main breaks, and we would have main breaks as well, even if this is passed. That is the reality. However, you're going to continue over the years to see more and more of these breaks. You're going to still continue to have, our system cost more because we're deferring that maintenance. And as well, we'd have to look at other funding mechanisms for that. Patrick, what other challenges, from your side in engineering do you see if this doesn't happen and Grosse Pointe Park doesn't put significant funding into our water and sewer system?
Well, I think it was talked about earlier about the average age of the infrastructure, and really the mains that are in the ground are exceeding their life cycle. Typically for cast iron mains, such as we have on the table over here, we can expect about 90 years out of those typically. And in many cases, we're exceeding that. And if not, it's going to be coming due relatively soon. So what we see on these systems is that, as they age and we get these extreme winter events, we can have a lot of breaks in a very short period of time. And those costs, they hit and you got to deal with them. And so there comes a point when that just is something you can't even budget for. And then to the point about, just spending all the dollars on Band-Aid fixes, you could be repairing the same section of pipe 3 or 4 times. A break is only this big. The pipe right next to it can break a day later. And so, the benefit of the strategy that's been laid out, if you look on the website, there's it's called an asset management plan for the water main system. It identifies those high priority areas and looks at data like the age and the breaks. And so, without having the funds though to attack that, we're not able to really deal with those worst case segments. I mean, the goal is that we have a lot of work to do. We understand that. But if we have an organized plan and can manage that asset, efficiently through data, we can stay in front of these things. If we, I think it was said earlier, all of a sudden we're seeing a lot of breaks on a certain street. I think as part of our process, every year you're going to be evaluating and picking out what those right projects are. And having that kind of consistent funding source allows you to be able to plan for that. But if it's not there, you might use it all up in 1 year and then you really don't have the ability to do that next project. So that's kind of the strategy at the end.
Yeah, and as of right now, before the year, we had about 1.8 million in our water sewer reserves. However, since that time, we've identified $100,000 lead service lines. We also have St. Clair Montefalco. We're working with them and separating. We also have the DPW project separating there, and we just approved the water main project. So that brings us down now close to about roughly 1.2 million that you want to have that rainy day fund in an extreme emergency that we need to, replace or fix something right away. So we're hoping over time we can keep building that up, and that's why I'm so excited. At our October council meeting, we'll also have Baker Tilly here to present their findings as well, be able to assist us for 10 years. They're looking at this process 10 years down the road as well. I'll be working with Grosse Pointe Park continually.
It's important too to talk about, we keep saying water mains is impacting dollars and cents. But there's all other aspects to it. As you can see by the water mains, the size, we're standardizing water mains throughout the city. The intent now is we're going up to 8-inch water mains. And so it's not just about reducing the breaks. This is better quality of service to residents. This is better water pressure. This is better pressure for fire suppression if it's needed. Again, across the board, this actually gives us multiple factors that impact everything. So, it's not just about saving money on it. Again, this is better service for the residents too.
Any other questions from the public?
What is the longest that a bond period can be? Can it be up to 20 years?
I don't know, I think top of my head.
Yeah.
It may depend on.
How long was
I think
the
20 to
bond
30 years.
Before the separation?
20 years.
20 years.
That's 20 years for the separation.
That was 20 years.
Thank you.
A lot of times you can't borrow longer than the lifespan of the asset that's
Makes
going to be
sense.
purchased. Again, with water mains, they can last a lot longer than 20, 30 years, but oftentimes when you're looking at, you really want to pay off debt over 100 years,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, we are trying to deal with the here and now, the reality that we have. 2 years ago, during those meetings, there was talk about bonds, potentially bonding out, and rates were much different then. Unfortunately, we're here now. We have these pressing needs, and it's just going to get worse. So our goal here is to start moving forward and start working on things. The sooner you start dealing with this, the better. It's the same thing with the lead lines. Unfortunately, and again, I don't want to sound doom and gloom. The reality is we actually are, relatively speaking, for the communities around us, our infrastructure is in better shape than communities around us. I mean, we're already separated. Grosse Pointe, what was Farm's estimate for separation?
About $30 million for a third of their community.
Yeah, so basically $100 million separation. Obviously, we know the circumstance in Detroit infrastructure. So again, we have a baseline. There's a lot of pressing needs, but again, I don't want to be super doom and gloom. We are building upon what we've got. But that said, again, the more proactive you are, the more preventative maintenance you do, the cheaper it's going to be to the residents. Because if we just keep kicking the can down the road, it's just at some point the cost is going to come due. I mean, you can draw a pie graph of what the cost of repairs and maintenance is going to be, and eventually it's going to gobble up the entirety of the budget. It's just not something that we can sit by anymore. Again, that's why being smart about targeting the critical areas is so important. So. Are there any other FAQ questions you want to go over, or?
Or I'll give any other questions from the public? Seeing none, yeah, you want to move to the FAQ and infrastructure website and
Sure, and we can pull up some common questions. Like I said, that was one of the big ones. There's a broad, I actually, it's not just about special assessments, but I've had some residents talking about, what can we look at in terms of grants? I'm sorry to say it, I don't want to be pessimistic. I do want to be a realist, though. We are hoping for, and we're pursuing every single state, federal dollar, every grant. I mean, just alone like DTE, we're pursuing energy efficiency grants. Everything that we can kind of go after, we're going to go after. But we need to be realistic. This is not going to be some magic bullet. I mean, basically think of it this way. There's never been in theory, better environment for municipalities to get federal dollars. I mean, there was just a massive infrastructure bill passed. But the reality is, as you saw with ARPA funding, there are realities of where Grosse Pointe Park places, due to political realities that we're just not super high on the totem pole. Again, we're going to pursue every dollar we can get. And again, after the last storm, we were blessed to get some money, some supplemental money. And anything that we get, we are going to put into the system. But even in the rosiest projections, there's just not the money out there to cover this entire fee. The other thing too is I believe very strongly that we have to kind of control our own destiny. Grosse Pointe Park, the residents, we need to be responsible for what we're doing here. We need to kind of handle the system. The idea, furthermore, that we're really going to socialize this into, overall community infrastructure project, it's just not realistic. At the end of the day, yes, our water, the DRI runs under Grosse Pointe Park. It runs into Detroit. There's been suggestions that we're an older community. There might be, newer communities upstream, no water, but it passes under our city. Perhaps we can try to get funding out of that. Again, anything that's realistic, we're going to pursue. But at the same time, we don't want to be chasing dreams here that really aren't going to happen. And we have to be realistic as well. The idea that, we might be able to lean on communities upstream and somehow that's going to give us some windfall of money. You have to logically think that chain of thought through, because our water then passes under Detroit. And given the realities of their infrastructure versus ours, if we basically, open that door and start trying to pursue money from neighboring communities, at the end of the day, we will probably be the net loser in that, because then we're going to be looked at to support our communities around us. The other thing too that we've been doing that's worth noting, infrastructure is a regional issue. So I want to say, Mayor Hodges, City Manager Seisler, did a great job reaching out to our legislatures. I mean, we've been getting support. Again, we do think we will get support from the state. And we are working with our neighboring communities with the other points, trying to understand the systems, because again, less water into the system. Step back, we talk often about combined sewers, separated sewers. You've got two main water resources running. You have your storm water, which is rainwater, and you have your sanitary water. And our city is fundamentally separated. We have a few areas which we're tackling aggressively to make sure that there's no inflow of storm water. But again, we're trying to work with our neighboring communities too, because anything that we can take out from the system going in, it's less burden on us. So.
I could make a comment on grants and loans real quick.
Sure.
Yeah. So again, we discussed that our infrastructure needs likely exceed $100 million. We're just one community of hundreds in the state of 50. The idea that there's going to be a grant program or influx of money, again, we have to take, we can't wait for that. I don't think it's coming. There has been additional funds lately that were applied and appropriated through the drinking water revolving loan program, which we've heard about and City Manager Seisler discussed yesterday where we placed. So we ranked 54th on this list. There's well over 100 communities applied. And even with this additional money, the way the scoring works in this program is it looks at the size of your community population. You have more points you get. It looks at what are you? Do you just have water mains? Do you do your own water treatment facilities too? The communities that do, like my previous one in St. Clair, I could get a much higher score in Grosse Pointe Park if I had my own water treatment plants. And the last major category that they look at is median household income. And that is where we will always be, we're never gonna be in the top 20 on this list of, there's all this money available, that's true, and some of it is in the form of, grants, but by the scoring is population, median income, and, get infrastructure needs, and our infrastructure needs are not that good enough, our median income is too high, and so again, reality is I don't see us ever moving up in this list when we have other communities who have the same needs we are, with lower median income or higher population, they're always gonna be, even if we move up 5, it might be 30 people added to the 50 who were above us, so. That's just kind of, some thoughts on the drinking water revolving fund, and the logic will probably hold true on the clean water revolving fund, which addresses sewerage, and stormwater issues. We have not put an application forward in that program yet. I believe the intention is to do so, and the scoring is different, but it's similar. But again, I think wanted to clarify that, kind of talked about a little bit last night.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you
So-
for that.
I'd like to make one more quick point. We talk about transparency, we're gonna have our capital plan out there, and that's gonna be really dictated by once we figure out our financing. We are gonna try to be as upfront and realistic with residents as possible. As you all have heard, we're working on the ERV, that's another big capital project of ours, which our goal, our full intention, working with Eagle, working with the state, is to try to have that in place for next rainy season. Again, that is, I don't want residents to be misled to think that that's a one-off and that solves all of our problems. That is for, an extreme event, but the goal here also is with this millage is to build out our sewer system so that it is in a much better position, that hopefully that emergency relief valve never actually has to get turned on. We're going to try to build out and optimize everything that we've got. To that point too, we're talking about grants, but I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the community itself. Grosse Pointe Park Foundation, as many of you know, made a incredibly charitable donation to the city to help make the initial purchases for the ERV. So again, we've got wonderful things that we can rely on, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for the help that we've gotten from the community itself. So again, I think we've got a good situation here. We've got a plan that we're working on, and again, I'm very appreciative for everybody's work on this and everybody's feedback. With that said, again, we have the FAQ out there. I appreciate the questions today. I'm sure that we'll get more sent over to us. And again, don't hesitate to contact us individually. Again, I want to get as much information out there as possible. That said, I kind of think that we're in a good place right now, unless anybody has another question for us. Mayor Hodges?
Thank you, Councilmember. I'd just like to point out that we have 2 representatives of the foundation with us here today, Mr. Lucas and Ms. Pitera. So thank you for being in partnership with the community and making great things happen. This is a really important goal of ours to solve this matter. So I appreciate the leadership of everybody in this room making this happen. You're obviously getting there with us there with focus and acumen. And the result is great partnerships like this. When you build that kind of trust with our community, people step up. So I'm really grateful for that, and grateful for the opportunity to work in partnership with the community, because the community can have a say in how we approach this and be part of the solution. So we'll get some guidance and direction from them, and then we'll have our marching orders, and we'll know what we need for putting this town hall together tonight, and for all that you're doing.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, all of you, for being here today. I think with nothing else to say, motion to adjourn. Well, I need to make a motion. Adjourn the meeting.
Just adjourn.
So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
The 100,000 spending. I remember reading about those, one of the best retention basins we have in case of another mass. So I think it's the combination of cleaning out the ones we've got right now, and switching from 6-inch to 8-inch. It's got a dramatic increase some volume we can take care of before we need the ERV.
Exactly. There's 2 different.